something that you're passionate about. You always ask me like, oh, how should I do this? Do you have
Yeah.
sound effects for that?
Like, do you have a sound effect package or a sound effects package for sale? All right, welcome back to another episode of Game Day Glare. Today is part 3 of the Overrated, Underrated show, and I think the score is 2-0 for me so far. So I figure, listen, we'll give E another episode. This way, maybe he can get on the board because it's been really unfair. So sorry about that, E. But
Winner takes all.
oh, the winner takes all. All right, right. The listeners have spoken. No, I think it's pretty even. So far, I know we kind of joked around about it being like PTI style, but we do see eye to eye on a lot of things. And then there's some things that we kind of throw each other curveballs and we're like, really? And when we talk about it after, we're always surprised of why we find some things overrated and underrated. And that's the beauty about sports videography is the tools that we use and the way that we use those tools. Everybody uses them a bit differently. So it's kind of cool to find out people's perspective.
I agree. It's exciting. Can't wait to see what's on the list this week.
Well, do you have any takeaways from last show? Is there anything that surprised you last show? Despite your LeBron, Jordan comparison, and how we have to have one podcast on how Kobe Bryant's overrated. Just on E wants to do one full podcast on Kobe Bryant.
No, I think I said all I had to say about that in the last one. But no. I think I know you pretty well, so I think I was pretty. I was expecting most of your opinions, not necessarily your arguments, but your opinions. I kind of knew where you'd go. You're an old man. You're very predictable.
Okay. I don't like change. Okay. I like what works.
Exactly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
All right. So I'm going to start today off with the first topic. Something that you've been pumping like crazy lately on all your socials, and it's gimbal.
Yes. Well, a few months ago, I probably would have said way overrated because I was never a big fan of not of gimbals, but of using them for sports because I felt like it was just a bit like a drone. It was just like extra work and it was limiting you doing other things and all that sort of stuff. But now that I've used a few at basketball game and stuff, and I realized that I don't know if they're underrated, but I think they are underrated for people who don't use them because I think it forces you to be more creative because it allows you to do all these camera movements and it just makes your composition just way more, a lot prettier, a lot more dynamic as well because you can get like super low angles that are like, slowly, doing what do you call it, like dolly shots and things like that. So you can get some really cool cinematic camera shot, but it's kind of there's more risks involved. So I think when you do get like nice shots, they're way better than if you were handheld, but you're probably going to miss more shots than if you were handheld because it's sometimes it doesn't move as fast or exactly where you want it to go. The zooming can be an issue as well, depending on what type of lens you're using, and you're limited in your choice of lenses as well because you're trying to balance the weight of the whole thing. So depending on what camera you're using, what gimbal you're using, all these things sort of complicate the process a fair bit. But if you can make it work, the result, basically all this hard work gets dividends in the end. So I'm going to say underrated if you haven't tried it yet.
I like how you threw in a bit of everything. I agree with a lot of what you said. Now, I think gimbal, the actual device, is overrated. Okay, like it's awkward, it's heavy, it doesn't really fit in a camera bag properly. Like that part I don't like. But the shot itself is underrated. So I'm torn because when you pull off a great gimbal shot and you throw that in your video, it's noticeable. It stands out. It adds some value to your video. You see the quality in it. You have to actually think about the shot that you're setting up with your gimbal. So all those things I see as an underrated tool, because they're going to enhance your video and they're going to make you look more pro, and they definitely stand out more. But I have like a love-hate relationship with gimbals. Like, balancing it is not fun. And even when the day before a shoot, I balance my gimbal, I'm ready to go. I just take my camera off and I show up with my gimbal and I put it back on. It's never exactly how it was at home. And then I find myself on shoots fiddling with it to get it perfectly sized and perfectly balanced. And it is tricky too when you switch lenses or when you want a wider shot. So I try to keep it very, very simple. Like when I have my gimbal, I try and use my wide angle lens. Uh, One reason, because it's smaller, it's a little bit lighter, and I know it's balanced for that. Now, my little hack that I've started doing is I got the Pocket 3, and my idea is that Pocket 3 is going to replace my gimbal. The reason for that is the quality is so good on that camera, but it's small, it's compact, and it's smooth. It's probably smoother than my actual gimbal. Like when you do the ninja walk with it and that, I don't see any bouncing that. Where sometimes still with a regular gimbal, I do see a little bit of bounce. But the new gimbals, like the DJIs, now it's RS3, RS4 is out. Every model is just getting better and better and better. So I do feel like the technology is a bit underrated also, because people don't realize how much they have evolved from the first gimbal to where they are now. And it's definitely something that you need to work with, and you definitely need to try and master. And the only way to master it is just keep shooting with it, keep trying, and you will get the amazing results, and you will get the results that you want, but it does take a little bit more planning. So I kind of voided the overrated, underrated.
Yeah.
I gave a bit of both. So I'll give one final thing. I'll say they're underrated. Okay.
All that, and you finish with underrated.
Yeah.
I thought you
Yeah.
were going to say over.
No, no, no. I mean, they look so good. When they're used properly, they're so good. It's just I have problems with the actual device itself. Like I said, balancing it, fitting in your camera bag, or if you travel, it's that piece of equipment that never fits nice in your bag. So, because it's awkward, it's an awkward shape. That's why the Pocket 3 for me right now, that seems to be replacing my gimbal.
Fair enough. I'm looking forward to see your videos with the Pocket 3 and see how it fits into your, with your main camera and all that.
It's funny because I actually did like a vlog the other day with it, and then when I was going through the footage, there was a clip of you talking to the camera.
I didn't talk, but I did wipe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So E and I went for lunch, and I left my Pocket 3 on the table, and I went to the bathroom. And when I got home, there was a clip of E waving back at me on that clip.
Yeah, it's better than the other way around, where if I would have taken the camera to the toilet.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, like drunk people do at weddings. Those disposable cameras that you leave at the table, there's always some funny jokes being done with those. Not by me.
That was a trend back in the day where you left cameras everywhere for all your friends to do. Now you can't do that. Everyone just has it on the phone. They have an app, and all the photos
Yeah, exactly. It's a
go to
QR
the app.
code.
Yeah. It's come a long way.
Yes.
All right, I'll
All
let
right.
you take a stab at the next one on the list.
Visual effects. And by that, we mean like adding visual effects to your sports videos. Like, is it overrated, underrated? Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. I'm going to say overrated. And the only reason I'm going to say overrated is because in this TikTok day and age where everyone's fighting for people's attention, I feel like it's overdone. I do think a good visual effect at the right time has a big impact, but a lot of the sports videos I see lately are just effect after effect after effect after effect, where I don't even really feel like a story to it. It's just all about like the guy kicks, he's on fire, this explodes, then all of a sudden he transitions to here, and you're all over the place. So I do feel like the effect use is being overrated. But it does take a lot of skill to learn all these visual effects and that. And I just wish maybe some people would just tone it down a bit and learn when the right time to use that effect is.
No, well, I agree. I think, yeah, I'd say overrated as well. Especially, I'm looking at it more from a beginner's perspective. Like, you don't need to have super, impressive visual effects in your videos for them to be good videos. Like, all you need is a nice edit that has a bit of a story or a bit of a flow or something that just makes you want to keep watching and stuff. You don't need to have like big fancy stuff happening every 5 seconds. So from that perspective, yeah, to be honest, I don't really have much to add to what you said. You pretty much said exactly what I was gonna say. I don't think it's that necessary, but if you've done, if you've been editing for a while and you're looking for a way to step your game up, or if you're trying to get noticed, get hired, obviously, if people know that you're able to do that level of visual effects, then that might be something that they'll want an editor to not necessarily do in every video, but at least be able to do. So it's always good to know how to do the basics in After Effects and things like that. I'm not saying don't do visual effects, but the expectation, especially from beginners, is probably a bit overrated.
All right, so I'll ask you a visual effects question then.
Mm.
What do you what is your favorite visual effect, or what is a visual effect that you feel like beginners should learn?
Well, I think a Saber is a good one, the Saber plugin, because it's free. You add it to After Effects, and then you can mask anything, whether it's a person or a ball or whatever. And then once you masked that, you can basically that mask you can apply an effect to the mask, to the edges. So for example, with a ball, you'll have like a round mask, a basketball, you have a round mask around it, and then you can make that ball look like it's on fire because the edges will have like fire coming out of them, or whatever, like an electrical sort of, I don't know, something, or haze, or whatever you want it to be, smoke. And you can do the same thing with a player. After he scores a couple threes in a row, you can make him catch fire. You can add all these different effects to it. So it's a rather simple one, and it's free. So yeah, that's a good one, and it adds again a bit of it makes a bit of pizzazz. It's just like the goal with a visual effect is just to emphasize like a certain moment in your video that's already a big moment that you want to really like go all in on it. So it's a good way to do that.
One of my favorite visual effects is it's masking, but it's when you have an object cross through the front of your lens, and then you
Mm.
mask out that, and you come into another
Like a
scene.
transition.
Yeah, and use it as transition, and I feel like that's a really good way to start to learn how to mask, and it's actually a very eye-catching, transition, and it's not that hard. So for beginners out there, it's an easy one to grab attention right away, and it was one of the first ones that I learned to do, and every now and then when you do it perfectly, like, when you show a client that they're not even sure what happened, you know? Now, us as being video editors, we know what's going on, but when you show it to somebody and they're not expecting to see that there, it does, catch their eye, and it's definitely a cool effect. So, and it's not too hard to pull off, so it's definitely something that, I enjoy doing, and I do no, I don't overdo it, but if I can do it, I will do it in my videos for sure.
All right, next one, camcorders, because I know a lot of people use camcorders to film sports because it's convenient, especially if you're filming outdoors and you want like a longer zoom. Um, I don't know if you use one or if you used one in the last few years, but do you think they're overrated or underrated? That was my deep voice.
Underrated. When I started this videography journey, me and my friends recorded everything on camcorders. Now, we used to do all these stupid little movies in my friend Ian's basement, and we filmed everything, but it taught us how to edit. It taught us how to, like, make up a shot list. It taught us how we were going to cut it, how we were going to act in front of the camera. It taught us a lot. Now, in sports, it's a little different, right? Because the action is happening in front of you. But a camcorder, first of all, it's very simple. Everything's an automatic. Well, majority of the settings are in automatic. The color looks good. The quality of them now is pretty good. You know, they're all 4K, but it's nice to have that zoom also. So for the typical mom and dad who just want to record their son or daughter, say playing soccer or whatever, it's a great alternative to make sure that you're not missing the shots. And it is a little bit more stable than, say, having your phone, or easier to use because it's a little heavier. So you have a little weight behind it. It's easier to move around with than that. I don't know how popular they are nowadays though, because whenever I go to sporting events, people usually have phones or tablets and that recording. I don't see as
Mm.
many camcorders, but I know for a lot of the live feeds and that they're still using camcorders, and it still seems to be the way to go because it's a safe bet, right? Like every time I do use my phone, I've mentioned this before, whether I'm flying a drone and that, because I don't turn off my messaging, I do get texts, I do get interrupted. Where a camcorder is meant to film, so you're not getting those interruptions. So it's the safest bet, I feel.
Well, I think that they're well, I was gonna say underrated as well because I think people don't realize as well that like any mirrorless camera, other than a cinema camera, any mirrorless camera is built for photography. We use them for video, but they're made for photography. So the camcorders are video cameras. They're the cameras that are built for video. So if your intention is to make video, especially like you said, like moms and dads that don't necessarily want to be playing with settings, and then also often like to just leave the camera on the tripod and don't want to have to deal with shutter speeds and overheating and all these different things. Camcorder to me is the way to go, like especially if it's an outdoor sport. If you're filming indoor, because typically camcorders will have like a smaller sensor unless you want to put a lot of money on it. So with a smaller sensor indoor, it's never that great, but convenience, yeah, the convenience part of it is very helpful for a lot of people, because if you're gonna buy a mirrorless camera but you're not gonna take the time to learn how to properly use it, it's not gonna look that much better than filming with a camcorder anyway. So you might as well go with the camera that's gonna do all the things that you don't want to do, and gonna keep it simple and convenient for you, and it's gonna allow you to get the shot and you won't have to worry about lenses and all these different things. So for that reason, for people who are looking for that type of filming experience, I'd say they're definitely underrated. But if you're going for like a cinematic look and all that, then yeah, stick with mirrorless. But it's more work. Like people, I think, too often forget that the better a video looks, the more work probably went into it. Like people just look for a better camera or a setting recipe that they can just, you know, uh, set once and just leave it, and it's always going to work like that. And but it doesn't. Like there's always a lot of work involved to make it look good, like gimbals.
It's a one other good thing about camcorders too is they don't really overheat. Where,
Yeah.
the mirrorless cameras do overheat, especially the ones that are non-cinema cameras, because like you said, they're meant for photos. They're not meant for video. We use them for video and they give great quality, but that's why you get some overheating issues, where the camcorder is safe. You don't have to worry as much with dust and rain, maybe a bit, but they're a little bit more durable than our mirrorless cameras. All right, next up, something that you get asked about on your YouTube all the time, field monitor.
Yeah, people are a big fan of my monitor. Every time I make a camera review, they'll say, "What's that monitor on the camera?" But I do think that they're underrated. Not that you absolutely need one as a beginner, but once you use one, it's hard to go back, because so often, and maybe it's because I'm old, but on the smaller LCD screen on your camera, it's hard to tell sometimes if you're in focus unless you're super zoomed in into something. Like it's hard to tell who's in focus, who's not. Exposure also can be not quite as obvious. And if you want to have a lot of different metering things like showing up in your screen, whether it's speaking, histogram, whatever, you start to run out of space. So having like a 5.5 inch, or in my case 7-inch monitor, that helps a lot. Like it's a lot more clear, it's a lot easier to see what's going on, there's more space, and yeah, it just makes your job easier. Your composition also gets better because You can see what you're doing a bit more. You can notice, like that tree is just like, I have a random branch coming out like on the left. Let me just move a touch to the right and get rid of it. Like little things like that you probably wouldn't notice on your LCD. So yeah, for all those reasons, I'd say underrated.
So I'm going to say overrated.
Oh,
Now, the reason why I do think a monitor is very valuable, I do think it makes your shots better than that. But I'm talking about actually going out and purchasing a field monitor. That's overrated because you could use your phone as your monitor. Okay, nowadays.
that's
And the issue I have with field monitors is everyone is different. Like I just think that they should come out with a norm where they all have touch focus. They all mirror your little LCD screen on your mirrorless camera. Where I bought a Field World one and it's very very good, but I still have to use my little LCD screen and it drives me crazy. So like there's been times where I think I'm recording and I'm like, oh no, I have to look at my LCD screen. I'm not recording. I have to look at the button because I don't see it right on my monitor. If I want to see everything on my monitor, then the LCD screen doesn't work on my camera. So I don't like that. It's something that maybe I'm just gonna have to buy another model or have to do more research on it. But I feel like they should all work the same, or at least have like from
Well,
now,
you
from
can
this date
buy the
on.
one that does this.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought the one I bought did it. And it says like, oh, touch screen, touch it. You're like, oh, perfect. And then it's not touch focus. So where I catch myself lately, I've been using my phone with the Sony app, and it works really, really good. And it's honestly, even when I put my LUT on, I see it perfectly. So I feel like they're a little overrated. They do make you look a little more pro, and it does help with your rig. And maybe you're giving your client a little bit more value. But for myself, I feel like going out and buying a field monitor, it's overrated because I have my phone. I can always use that.
Fair enough. But it's the phone, yeah, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Like this, you're
Y-
gonna need your phone at some point to
Yeah.
text someone, take a call, whatever, or check something, and then yeah, gets a bit messy.
So what's your model, by the way? Because people are always asking you.
It's the Port Keys LH7P. Yeah.
And it has touch focus.
Yes, you can control all the exposure settings and the focus from the monitor itself.
And
So
just hooked up through HDMI, or it's hooked up through HDMI and USB-C?
not just HDMI. The connection is through the Wi-Fi signal of the camera. So you don't need to be hooked up to a Wi-Fi. That's also like a misconception. Like when you hear Wi-Fi, people think you need to connect to like a Wi-Fi in the stadium or your house, but it's the Wi-Fi signal from the camera. So you don't need to have access to Wi-Fi where you're going.
So not to totally bash, because I have been bashing my Field World monitor, but the good thing about my Field World monitor is I cannot have it attached to my camera, and there's an adapter, and I can hand it to a client, and they can actually see
Mm.
my camera from it. So it could do all that, but it can't do touch focus. So that's where it's a bit frustrating. You can use it as external monitor where you're not even hooked up to the camera, but you can't use touch focus. So that's where I guess it was the model I chose. I didn't choose so wisely, but it was a good price on Amazon. So I was like, why?
Well, I think as far as like being able to control focus and exposure settings and white balance on the monitor, I think Portkeys, like they've got a few different models that do it, but I think they're the only ones that do it. Then, like I know you can do it on the phone because of the Sony app, but in terms of monitors, yeah, I'm not. There might be a company that I'm not aware of, but as far as I know, I think Portkeys are the only one. So if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments.
Click E's affiliate Portkeys link below.
Yes, do I have one? I don't think so. Go on Amazon. Maybe I have one. I can't remember. All right. Next one, which is one that I definitely go which way I'm going. Auto ISO. Overrated, underrated, properly rated.
I don't even know what it is. I've never used it. I don't know what auto ISO is. As a pro videographer, I would never use any auto settings. So no idea what you're talking about. Now I'm going to say a little bit underrated. I have, after we had a conversation one day about auto ISO, I actually used it. I was at a conference, I'm doing video and photo, and lighting was like a disaster. Okay, so there's different lighting everywhere. So I did use auto ISO for when I switched to photo mode, and it was very helpful. It made like my pictures weren't grainy at all when I was in dark spots and that. So it was a helpful tool. I don't suggest using it all the time. Um, I use it because I was kind of stuck in a situation. If I can control the situation, I'm not going to use auto ISO at all. At all, I'll try and avoid it. But to get me out of jam, it really really helps. So I feel like it was overrated. Sorry, underrated. And I only use it because we spoke about it. And you were telling me, yeah, yeah, try it, try it. Trust me, it's gonna help you. It's gonna help you. And it really really did. So
I say that.
yeah, this was a while ago though. So you probably
Was that
forget.
drunk?
Maybe it was when we did one of the late night podcast ones.
Uh,
But I never really thought about using auto ISO, to be honest.
I was gonna say way overrated, so I'm
Well,
surprised to hear you say that. I suggested
yeah,
it.
because I was switching back from photo to video.
No, yeah, yeah.
That's
Well, like I say overrated, not that it's you should never ever use it, but more so because it's overused. Like I think people rely on it way too much. They just see auto and they figure it like, oh, that's one less thing I have to worry about, and the shot typically will always be bright. It works. It does what it's meant to do, but it goes way too high a lot of the time. Like I'd rather have, if you're filming in a dark environment, it's okay for it to look a bit dark on screen. Obviously, you want to see stuff, but it like it's gonna overcompensate and it's gonna go at like 15,000, 25,000 ISO, and people don't even see it because it's just on auto. But like your image gets real grainy sometimes in situations where it didn't have to. And so for that reason, I'd say overrated, because I think people again don't want to learn all the settings, how it works, and they feel like, oh my god, if I have to like monitor like 3 or 4 different settings, this is way too much. So I'll leave this one and that one on auto. But in reality, it's not that much. Like once you set your ISO, you might change it a little bit because there's one side of the room that's a bit darker, but you're not going to be playing constantly with it, and it's going to make a difference because there's once you add noise to your image, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. Like you can obviously use like denoiser plugins and things like that, but they don't all work great. They cost money. They take a lot of time. Probably affects the quality as well. So you'd much rather, if I have the choice between filming a little bit underexposed and then pushing the brightness in post, or just like over compensating with my ISO and then introducing noise to my image that I can't get rid of, I'll go with the first option. Like I'd rather be underexposed and deal with it later on, because then I can decide to keep it clean and dark or bright and noisy, but at least I have a choice. All right. So for that reason, auto ISO overrated.
all right.
That's all I have to say about that.
That's it. That's it. I mean, hey, sometimes you have to show people in your videos, I'm filming in a dark place. Like you have to understand it's a dark hallway or it's a dark entrance or something, you know?
Yeah, because like if you think of it, like how many times have you watched a movie and it's the action is going in the dark and you're like, "Geez, I can't see shit." Well, it's dark. That's the whole thing. You're supposed to, they like if I'm in sports, obviously, if you're filming a basketball game, you want to be able to see everything. But if you're in the locker room, if you're like in an environment, if you're filming outdoors, just playing and at night, and it's not like this big stadium with all the lights, it's okay for it to look a bit darker. Like you might want to push the shadows a little bit to allow you to see a bit more details in the darker spots, but you don't have to make it look like it's super bright all the time.
Next up, low aperture lens, f.28 and lower.
Yeah, I think low aperture lenses, to film sports, uh, I was gonna say overrated in the sense that people assume that because they got an f2.8 lens, they need to film at f2.8, when in reality, uh, the your lens is always going to be sharper at just a bit above like the minimum the widest aperture. So like for example, if I like most of my lenses are 2.8 and I shoot at 4 and the image is going to be sharper at 4 than it is at 2.8. So yes, they are very convenient for obviously low light purposes. I will go to 2.8 when I need to, but they are also very good at you want to have a 2.8 so that it can look amazing at 4, if that makes sense. So you don't want a 2.8 so that you can film everything at 2.8. Because if you have a 4 and I have a 2.8 and I film at 4 at the same level of quality, same glass, blah blah blah, my 2.8 at 4 should be a touch sharper than your 4. So are you going to notice that on social media, on a sports video where everything's moving around? Definitely not. But I'm just saying, technically speaking, like there is an advantage with an f2.8. Might not be but it doesn't mean that you need to use it at 2.8 all the time. So yes, I think they are a bit underrated, but probably overrated in the sense that people overuse the 2.8 feature. Was that an answer? Or
You
like
kind
a
of tippy-toed around it
overcomplicated?
like my gimbal answer, but
Overcomplicated this way too much, but yeah, it's my 2 cents anyway.
all right. So I'm going to say overrated. And I'm going to say I'm just talking about lenses that are lower than 2.8. So 1.8
Mm.
or 1.4. For sports,
Prime lenses.
yeah, you're not going to be like, unless you're doing an interview or stuff in the locker room, really, game action, you're not going to be using it wide open. It's going to be too hard for your focus. So for that reason and that reason only, I feel like that the faster lens is a little bit overrated for what we do. Now, if I was a photographer, then I'd say no, because I want that as much light as I can get to get the cleanest image. But for us, like, yeah, if you're already going to be using that 1.8 and then you go to 2.8, it's okay. That way you could it's better for you. But at the price of the 1.8 or 1.4, it's a big price jump from a 2.8 lens to a 1.8 lens. So I feel like it's overrated in that sense. Would I want one? Definitely. Definitely would I would take one. But for the guy starting out or the guy who does this on the side, then I think 2.8 is efficient enough for what we do for a job.
Hmm. But like a 1.8 can be great if you're doing like crowd shots because not only typically there's a lot less lights in the stands that there are on the court or on the field, so you need that extra that extra light coming in. But also it's good when you get a crowd shot. Let's say there's like 6 or 7 people in the shot. It's a bit of a boring shot unless they're all sort of jumping up and getting excited at the same time. That's awesome. But if you just have like if you have a few people and not much going on, but you're filming there because there's one person that you want to pay attention to, it's good to have that person in focus and the other ones out of focus because that way the viewer will notice that person straight away and pay attention to them. So where if you're at a higher aperture, all 6, 7, 8 of them will be in focus, and it just becomes this generic shot that just, yeah, it's not that exciting.
I am looking to put a 1.8 in my bag, but a 50 millimeter 1.8, but more for interview styles and stuff like that. I'm debating between the 35 and the 50 as a prime lens. So we'll see, but they are more expensive.
Well, it depends. So there's a lot of 50 mil that are quite cheap, like third party lenses that you can get for cheap that are like 1.4 and 1.8, but well, even Sony, I'm sure would make one, but it's not, it won't be like a G Master, but I'm sure there's affordable ones.
Actually, speaking of G Master, I saw a guy and he's like, "Hey, you want to save a lot of money?" So he had like the G Master with the black G, and he just swapped it for the G with the orange G, and he's like, "I just saved myself a ton of money just by doing upgrading the sticker."
Ah, the sticker. I was like, how do you swap the thing?
No, you just upgrade the sticker.
Nice.
All right, next up, CapCut.
I'm gonna say underrated. Sorry, because I do think like it's way better when it came out, and it was made for TikTok, and it's owned by TikTok, and I thought it would be super basic and yeah, nothing to write home about. But when I tried it, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Like you can do some decent work on it. There's a lot of visual effects that are sort of drag and drop that can look quite good, quite better than I expected them to look. So yeah, and it's free. So you can be overrated if you're free. So yeah, I'd say underrated. Does a good job. Great place to start. Like nowadays, when someone asks like which platform should I use to just start and as a beginner and get going, I always suggest CapCut. I think eventually you will outgrow it for sure, but for beginners, I think it's an amazing place to start. But we saw recently, if you live in the US, it can disappear pretty quickly. But it looks like it only disappeared for like 12 hours, and it looks like it's here to stay now. But yeah, don't get too attached to it. Just see it as a entry point because you never know what's going to happen to it. And like I said, very poorly, you will outgrow it one day.
Actually, those are good points. I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say it's underrated, and I didn't realize that it was owned by TikTok. So when everyone's CapCut went down and everyone's freaking out, I was like, oh my god! I then I made the connection, but I had no idea that it was owned by TikTok. I did know that everybody who was editing on TikTok was using CapCut, but I just was like, okay, it's just now it makes sense why they put hashtag CapCut. Um, I'm gonna say that it's a powerful tool because the effects in it are really really good. Like, I actually used it, for rotoscoping. I had a quick project, a quick turnaround, and a client needed something like they needed it yesterday. So I was like, "Oh, I gotta rotoscope this guy out," and I just threw in TikTok and I said, "Remove background," and boom, it was done. And then I cheated. I just put a green background behind them, and then I re-exported the clip. I brought it into my Premiere project. I used the chroma key, picked that green off, boom, put their background they wanted, and sent that clip off in 2 minutes. So I was like, wow, this was a time saver. Where in Premiere or in After Effects, it would take me a lot longer to get those same results. Now, DaVinci has something similar that they have. I haven't really used it, but they had an update in theirs that has something very similar that matches the CapCut background removal. But the CapCut one was flawless. Like I was so impressed. It took 2 seconds. The only thing that I did not like about the free version is my footage was in 2397 and it exported it in 30 frames. So that was the only issue that I had with it. But honestly, for a free tool, and if you're learning how to edit, I think that's a great place to start. But yes, you will want to upgrade eventually depending on where you're taking your career.
Hmm. Yeah, because I think like what you just mentioned, the thing that the background removal, it's not just the background removal because it has the ability to recognize what the subject is and what the background is. Then all these other effects you can apply, like let's say it's a I don't know, like a shine effect, and you just drag and drop it on your click, and it will on your clip, and it will recognize the subject, and the shine will just appear on the subject and not on the entire frame. So similar to sorry, getting very popular at sea. But so yeah, so like if you want to put an effect on the player, you can just drag and drop it and it will understand and it'll just like appear on the player himself and not on the entire frame, which doesn't exist in Premiere and other platforms like that. Like you have to mask something if you want to separate it. So the fact that CapCut does it automatically is a big plus.
And I feel like Premiere, DaVinci, they look at CapCut and see how simple these things are, and then they see that people want these things, that they have no choice to eventually add them to our paid software. So it kind of pushes them a bit too, especially that theirs is free.
Next on the list, something that you're passionate about. You always ask me like, oh, how should I do this? Do you have
Yeah.
sound effects for that?
Like, do you have a sound effects package for sale?
We're talking, of course, about sound design. Underrated, overrated. Let's discuss.
Underrated. It's underrated 100%. Your sound design is just as important as your edit. Uh, we have was it five sensories, and sound is one of the main ones. to make a good edit, you have to have good sound. So I feel like it's just as important as your edit. And it's one of the hardest parts to do is sometimes I'll make a nice edit and then I'll go through it and start adding the sound effects and tweaking all my audio. And that takes longer than it did for my actual edit. So for me, I feel like it's really, really underrated.
I agree. And I think, in a way, sound effects are the poor man's visual effects because you don't need to learn how to use any fancy platform to add sound effects. It's literally there's a sound, you place it where the action matches that sound, and you're done. So there's nothing crazy going on there. If you're editing video, you can definitely do that. And doing that, taking the time to add, whether it's adding sound effects or playing with the audio by adding like a bit of a low pass or a filter of some sort, like doing that will will make your video so much more dynamic, so much more interesting that you can do with very little skills. You can do like a great sound design job that will be as impressive, if not more, than a visual effect. So yeah, definitely underrated.
I liked your analogy, by the way. That was a good one.
I'm full of them.
Poor man's visual effects. There you go. All right. Next up, double SD card recording.
Yes, I'd say overrated. To be honest, it is for for ease of mind. Like it is safer and it makes you like because personally I never had really an issue with a card, like maybe one clip, like the first or the last clip before the camera, let's say your battery dies and then that last clip, then you were recording while it happened, things like that. Like I'll lose a clip that way, but I've never lost an entire card and thought, thank God I had the other one. I'm lucky. I'm sure, like everybody says that until it happens to them, and then it becomes the worst thing in the world. So obviously, I'm just one of the lucky ones. But for that, like I wouldn't pay extra money just for that feature. I think it's a bit like sealing, like a weather sealing. All these things that people, oh, there's no weather sealing. Oh my God, like I don't know. Personally, it's never been an issue whether there was weather sealing or not. So these things are good to have, but I wouldn't pay more money just for those. So same thing with dual cards recording. Like it's fun to have, but a bit overrated in my opinion.
I'm going to agree. It's overrated. It's a luxury. Your camera doesn't need to have it. It comes standard on the higher model, say Sony cameras, for instance, because you're paying that premium price. They're looking for ways to charge you more. That's a nice feature. I don't use it all the time. If I have a big shoot with clients, and that I'll use it. But if I'm just filming like B-roll and stuff like that, I'm not using it. I'm not using the dual recording because I'm not backing up both cards after anyway. I'm backing up the one card, everything's good. I move on. So it takes more battery. It heats up my camera a little bit more. So if I don't have to use it, I'm not going to use it. So that's why I feel it's overrated.
I agree. Mac computers for editing. This is going to be a whole of this, like iPhone, Androids,
yeah.
Mac, PC, or Mac computers, overrated or underrated.
So I'll give you a backstory here. I've never had a PC. I had a Mac when they weren't cool. Like no one had Macs when I had a Mac. I mean, even my parents were like, why are you buying a Mac? So, and I paid a lot of money for that Mac. Actually, my dad paid a lot of money for that first Mac. That G4, 512 gigs of RAM.
The colored bubbles behind them. Yeah.
100 gig hard drive, DVD burner. Like that was top model, okay? But for editing, I'm going to say they're overrated for editing because you can really spec out some PC laptops. You can use the same software we use, whether it's DaVinci, CapCut, Adobe Premiere. So if you're just for editing, I'm going to say it's overrated. As an ecosystem now, I don't know anything else. Like you give me a PC and I open it up and I feel lost. Like I don't know where I am. I don't know how to do anything. But if I'm just talking about editing, then I was going to say it's overrated. But for the rest of my life, it's underrated. Like the Mac OS for me is perfect. and it's only perfect because I don't know anything else. And we've already discovered on this show, I do not like change. So I'm not changing anything else because I know where my stuff is.
Good points. But yeah, I'm kind of like you when we were working for the Canadians and we went from PC to Mac. That was the last time I used a PC. So that was what 2008 or something like that. So yeah, I'm totally lost on the PC. But what I do, but I think you're probably right in saying that you can probably get like a much more for price value, you can get a pretty good PC that will edit great for less money than the Mac. But but sometimes when you go into these custom sort of things, and that's why I like Macs as well. Like because when you customize a PC, that's when you start getting errors that say, "Oh, this software doesn't recognize this graphic card, or it doesn't," and then you get these errors, and your computer starts crashing when you're rendering, or your render doesn't want to go through, and it always stops at a certain point, and yeah, you get all these issues that come up if you're customizing your PC, and then there's certain pieces that don't really work well together with whatever software you're using. Where with a Mac, obviously you don't really get that because it's all sort of key in hand sort of thing. You can add RAM by yourself, like if you want to, but that's pretty much the only thing you can change unless you're really savvy into computers, which I'm not. But that's why I like Macs, is because like with a PC, when your computer gets full and you're trying to clean up a few things and just there's just so many files. You open like a software folder and it's just file after file. There's hundreds of files with like generic names. You have no idea what they do. So you're like, do I delete and hope that it's not gonna mess up everything, which it always does? Or I just keep all these extra files that I don't know what they do, but I just don't want to break anything. So with a Mac computer, it's dumb proof. Like for me, for someone like me who's just good enough to understand how a computer works, but not good enough to understand each individual file, like a Mac environment is perfect because like each software is one file. Like, of course, there's like if you right click on it, you can go and there's a more structure with other things, but everything is much cleaner. So when there's an issue with my Mac, as long as I've got access to internet, I 99.9% of the time manage to solve it by myself. Where if I have an issue with a PC, it's always more complicated. And you need like someone who actually knows what they're doing to help you. So for that reason, I really like a Mac because I am self-sufficient with a Mac. We're far a bit from editing, but
Yeah, that's it. We didn't even mention editing there. E just talked
yeah.
about, so E has a problem. He can't hook his printer up to his Mac. That's what he's trying to get to, guys. Okay.
No, but I love that. Yeah, every time there's an issue, I can just Google it and I'll figure it out. Where with a PC, it often gets more complicated than that. But with editing, I think like since Mac, Apple started doing their own processor chips, like the M1, M2, M3, and now M4. Yeah, they're great because now you can edit like 4K footage on the MacBook Air or, like any sort of small laptop. So my main computer is a MacBook Pro. So like there's no point of having a desktop anymore because you can set it up as a desktop, but you can also take it on the road if you want to. So why would I get a desktop computer that I can't take with me if I decide to go work somewhere else? So yeah, from that perspective, I also really like Macs for that.
The only issue is now with the M chips is you can't add more RAM with the M chip.
Yeah, that's true.
When you buy it now, that's what it comes with.
Yeah.
But like I have an M3 and
Oh,
dude, I can edit anything on this so far.
I have an
I,
M1 Max.
I have
Good to go.
no issues. So I'm very, very happy. All right. Next up, V mount battery.
I'm gonna say underrated because not a lot of people use them because it's an accessory that's probably not very high on the on the list of things to buy. But they are very helpful because especially if you get one before buying 5 6 batteries, like if you already have like a bunch of batteries, well, might as well use them. But instead of buying three camera batteries, might as well buy one V mount battery because that will last you all day. Like I went to film the other day with one, and I filmed an entire game, but like a bit before, a bit after, and I think it was still at like 75% when I was done. So there, and I never turned it off, So it's very convenient for that. You don't have to worry about changing batteries and all that stuff. But also you can connect. You can power your monitor if you want. You can power your laptop while you're editing. Like it becomes basically a power bank that you can connect to anything, your phone, whatever. So it's very good for that because you can have potentially everything that needs to be powered on your camera kit all connected to the V mount battery. But at the same time, that means you've got all these cables sort of going around. So sometimes, so like for me, for example, for my monitor, I'd rather just put a normal battery on it because that battery is good enough to keep my monitor on the entire time. I won't have to switch it. So I'd rather just put a battery at the back than have an extra cable that's in the way when I'm manipulating the camera. But it can power everything you have with you. It can charge your batteries as well, which defeats the purpose. But so for that reason, I think it's underrated.
I'm gonna say overrated.
Nope.
Now, the
You
only
don't know what
reason
you're
why I'm
talking
gonna say overrated is I don't have one at the moment. I keep
about.
putting it in my Amazon cart and then I take it out because I'm too cheap to buy it. I'm like, oh man, $300. But I have three extra Sony batteries that are right here that are $300. So it makes sense to just buy a V mount battery. The issue that I have with V mount is there are some regulations for when you fly. So there are certain sizes that are too big. And then I feel like if I get one that's not big enough, will it do everything I need? So I'm having an issue picking the right one for my rig. And it also makes your rig a little bit heavier. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit overrated. It is convenient though. It is convenient. And I mean, hey, if you're going to buy two more Sony batteries, you might as well just buy a V mount.
To your point as well about convenience, sometimes it is annoying with the LCD screen because now your LCD screen has to be on the side and you can't just like close it when let's say you put your camera down or something like that. You have to move the battery to be able to close it. So yeah, there's little annoyance, but at the end of the day, it's very practical.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that if you didn't check your battery level for a while and then all of a sudden it starts flashing and dies on you. Like you have adequate power.
Yeah, it's also helping a bit with overheating, especially if you connect the battery through a USB-C port instead of like a dummy battery. Because with a dummy battery, I feel like it does the same thing. Like that dummy battery gets just as hot as a normal battery. But if you connect it through the USB-C port, the battery will get hot as well at some point. But I feel like it's a bit slower.
Alrighty, we're down to our final three questions, and then this whole overrated, underrated is done. So you got three questions to try and maybe get a win here. All right. 3D.
Underrated. I think, and I know I said VFX were probably overrated, but I think like if you're at that level, I'm not saying for beginners, I'm saying if you're at that level where you're doing visual effects, every time people start like a video or have like a little moment in the video, obviously you're not going to have like 3D like popping up all the way through the video. But like if you have one moment where I've seen like, I think it was the Sacramento Kings, like their opener, like their intro video. It was like a 3D player that was dunking, transforming into a real player. Like those transition between real and fake. And most people probably didn't realize that it was a 3D thing. Like they just thought it was the same player that was filmed in a 3D kind of way, but it was done in Blender. It's just like going from one to the other sort of thing. But yeah, just having those moments where it becomes like it just goes another level. Like it's not just a VFX. It's that step further. Like I said, I wouldn't do it like 5 times in the video, but like once or twice, it just shows, okay, that's whoever made this is very savvy in visual effects. So if that's what you're going for, like if that's what you want your business card, your portfolio, like if you want people to look at your stuff and hire you to do visual effects, then yeah, definitely dabble in 3D because that will gets you into the upper tier of uh, of people who do visual effects for sports anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna say it's an underrated skill, and it's definitely underrated. You don't see it that often because it's really hard to do. I know you said Blender before. I have a friend, he works in Nuke, but he does like visual effects for movies and stuff like that, where he adds like blood and gunshots and stuff like that. But he uses Nuke all the time. But 3D is it's a complicated skill. I mean, yeah, we have 3D tracking in After Effects and that, but it's really, really hard to master that. So the more 3D stuff you can learn, the more if you can add it to your video, the more it's going to help you evolve and get further on in your career.
See, we agree. Second to last, mic'd up videos. Are they overrated, underrated? They're very, very popular. What do you think? It's probably more overdone than overrated, but yeah, what do you think?
I'm gonna say underrated because a good mic'd up video is good. It gives you a different perspective of a player, of a team, of a play. So it gives you that little behind the scenes that you wouldn't always have, and I feel it's refreshing than the normal highlight videos and that. So I'm gonna say, done properly, it's underrated.
I agree. And I think what I'd like to see would be just because I think we're sort of like if you're miking up a player, then it becomes a mic'd up video, and this video is entirely about him talking during the game. Right. What I like is to not that I do it, but what I would like to do is just mic up certain players that I know will be involved and are important either in my storyline or just like as their roles on the team, whether it's a coach, for example, as well, and just have that audio available. So that my video is not necessarily a mic'd up video where the entire time it'll just be people saying stuff, but a crucial moment where I want to hear that player, like what he's saying to a teammate or to a player on the other team, or whether it's the coach that's saying something very specific about something that's about to happen in my video. If I have that audio, that makes my video so much better. It goes down to what we're saying about sound design. So just having that option available to me is way underrated. Yeah.
All right, last one. Do or die here, E. It's all or nothing. Sports videography podcasts.
Oh, overrated. I hate them. Hate them. Like I think people who have a sports videography podcast should be shot dead.
I'm going to say underrated because E doesn't understand all the work I put into this podcast. You know, he just shows up. He's a talent. He comes from makeup. He shows up. 5 minutes late. Hey, man, sorry I'm late. What's up? What are we talking about today?
Just got up 10 minutes ago. Yeah, no, obviously we're just joking around. But I think I like the fact that there's a few of them now without without hours. There's the 505 podcast, I think it's called, and there's Juan Morales he does a few interviews, had a more of an interview show going. So yeah, these things it's cool to see that in our niche. So yeah, they're underrated. You should go and listen if you haven't already.
Yeah, and you know what? It's something that sports videographers. It's a space for us to talk. It's a space for us to share our craft. And you know, people think it's this glorified job filming sports and that, but after listening to podcasts and watching YouTube and that, you realize it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of skill and it takes a lot of dedication. And you know, we just try and shine some light on it and hopefully get the next generation of sports videographers out there and get them out on the right foot. That's it. Well, I'll give E the victory, so at least he's on the scoreboard finally on this one. But I guess that's it for overrated, underrated, and this episode of Game Day Glare.
But yeah.